The bill now be read a second time. This is the third of the bills that I have referred to that I'll be moving in relation to gambling, but this one deals specifically with gambling advertisements. It seeks to restrict gambling advertisements on radio and television during times when children are most likely to be watching, between 6 a.m. and 8:30, and again from 4 to 7:30. The current parameters are found in the Gambling Code of Practice rather than in legislation, and gambling advertising in this jurisdiction is not permitted to be broadcast on radio between 6 to 8:30 a.m. and for radio and TV between 4 and 7:30 on any day of the week. It's a small but vital step in protecting our kids from being bombarded by gambling ads and lured into lifelong bad habits. And Mr. President, I will say, I acknowledge gambling is legal. Like many things, some people can do it responsibly. But when it becomes as ever-present a temptation, especially for young people as it has today, the risks are simply too great for us to continue to ignore. The reality is that gambling ads are everywhere. We all know that. On our screens, on social media, on apps, they come with dangerous promises of easy money, mate bets and winning streaks. And I don't buy into the claims that have been made recently and historically by television networks that gambling advertising is a necessary lifeline, and I'll touch on that a little later. But I do reflect on the fact that just recently Bill Shorten again remarked on ABC's Q&A, commercial television networks might be in diabolical trouble without ad revenue from gambling operators. Mr. President, in the last financial year alone, betting companies spent a staggering $238 million on advertising across TV, radio and online. $162 million of that just on television. That is a significant spend. But we have to ask ourselves who's really paying the price for this, and it's certainly not the networks. They seem to be doing very well off the back of those advertisements. It is the people losing their savings, their homes, and in the worst case, of course, their lives. And when we prioritise advertising revenues over the well-being of our children, we're choosing the wrong side. The complaints from the TV stations about losing ads absolutely pale in comparison to the human cost of problem gambling. As the saying goes, you win some, you lose more. And it's the next generation of punters that we should be worried about the most. This bill is one way to start taking real action to prevent gambling from becoming a lifelong addiction for young South Australians. And make no mistake, every product our children access online now, in one way or another, it is geared towards normalising gambling behaviour. It is built into the games they play, the apps they play, the videos they see, and it is all designed to normalise gambling behaviour. None of that happens by coincidence or chance. It is designed to have that impact on them. Now, some might say this is an overreaction, but let's not make this more dramatic than it is. The Melbourne Cup will still be televised every November. The front bar can air after 8:30 and Spruik Mix Multi. Dedicated racing channels like racing.com and Sky Racing can continue to operate via the existing exemptions. This is about finding a balance and ensuring that children are not bombarded with gambling messages during their formative years. And finally, it's encouraging to see this conversation once again happening at a federal level, but at the same time, very disappointing. The You Win Some, You Lose Some More report has recommended a phased approach to a total ban on gambling advertising, and this has become the topic now of much discussion around the nation, but particularly federally. And I'll get into that in a moment, but I want to remind members that we don't need to sit back and wait for what the other jurisdictions or what the federal government does, because we have already and we can again go above and beyond what other jurisdictions have been doing in the absence of a nationally consistent approach. The bill, as I said, is also in line with the most recent findings and recommendations of the Grattan Institute's report, A Better Bet, How Australia Should Prevent Gambling Harm, which cites our nation's lax approach to regulatory gambling and effectively letting the gambling industry run wild. That report also recommended a blanket ban on gambling advertising within 3 years, because we know that despite the backtracking, and that's precisely what we have now, of the Albanese government, at the behest of the gambling lobby and media companies, partial bans aren't effective. And any discussion around partial bans now is a huge disappointment, and that is reflected by the fact that so many voices have joined the chorus of opponents to what is currently being played out at the national level. There is clear evidence, Mr. President, and you only need to look at the success of the tobacco industry, tobacco advertising ban to appreciate how effective a complete ban can be. And there is clear evidence that shows that bans on tobacco advertising were responsible for decreases in smoking rates, especially amongst young people, when they were implemented wholly. If you want to make a dent, you can't have bans that are subject to this and subject to that. You can't have partial bans if you are genuine about the outcome that you want. And we also need to get real about the influence the gambling lobby has in this country. How is it that 80% of Australians do support gambling ads being banned, and yet we refuse to budge? How much do those same media companies who are again lobbying against the bans reap in from gambling operators in advertisement fees? Well, I've already pointed to those figures. And it's really important to note, Mr. President, that this is not a new issue by any stretch. The debate taking place today at the federal level, which is connected to this bill here, is a repeat of what occurred when the coalition government and the Labor opposition killed off Nick Xenophon's bill in the Senate in 2017, following a previous parliamentary inquiry. The arguments being levelled by the federal government, by the gambling proponents, are exactly the same today as they were in 2017. They say we can't ban ads altogether because free-to-air TV, and Bill Shorten has on the record as saying this, are in such financial crisis that their existence relies on some level of gambling ads. And that argument hasn't changed in those years between 2017 and now. You have to ask, what have we done to address the problem in the meantime? And the reality is we've done nothing. We've done absolutely nothing to address the issue, but the issue has become so much worse. We are, as a nation, so addicted to the political influence, and make no mistake, we are talking about the single biggest donor in terms of political donations in the nation and the most influential lobby that we have in this country. And like my predecessor said, for years on end when he was in politics, what we have here in Australia when it comes to the gambling lobby is absolutely akin to the gun lobby in America. This is the sort of political influence that lobby has over our politics. And it's not just the gambling lobby. Media companies are equally concerned because they stand to profit from gambling ads in the millions, and their competition at the moment has never been more stiff with the explosion of online platforms that they have to compete with. The financial crisis woes are absolute rubbish with respect. That's the line the parties have been hidden behind now for years, and that is the line they are trying to hide behind now. And Mr. Acting President, perhaps I can, sorry, Mr. President, I apologise. Mr. President, if I can speak from some first-hand experience, if you need convincing of the sort of influence that these lobbies can have over our politics, then you need only look at the last election in 2018 when the former head of the AHA said, and I quote, to the question of why do you donate? And they said, well, they ask for it. If they stop asking, we'll stop giving. The first thing the Liberals did when they won that election, as I've said previously, is reward the AHA with poker machine reforms that removed note acceptors in this state. A bill was introduced at the time that the former AHA president claimed as his own. And if you imagine that sort of political influence now magnified at a federal level, where our gambling addiction is costing us Australians over $25 billion a year, you can't buy this argument that free-to-air or regional media organisations aren't going to be able to afford to sustain themselves because they rely on that sort of advertising, or indeed that the gambling lobby is going to be disadvantaged. Last year, with the former Gambling Commissioner here in South Australia asking for a review of our codes of practice around gambling ads, we saw the exact recommendations and findings being made by him as what I'm seeking in this bill. That's the good news. Here in South Australia, our restrictions in terms of gambling advertisements go beyond any other jurisdiction because our codes allow us to do that, and we had the foresight to do that during those viewing hours that most impact kids. What this bill that I'm seeking to introduce today does is simply extend that further by having the same sorts of bans in the morning and the same sorts of bans in the afternoon during the time that children are most likely to be viewing. And we can do that in the absence or whilst the feds keep killing each other over what they're going to do around gambling ads. When the former commissioner, and this is important for members to know, when the former commissioner looked at this issue in 2023, in effect what happened was there was backlash from the media organisations and from the gambling lobby that this would put South Australia at a competitive disadvantage to other states, and it would adversely impact revenue for government, for media and for gambling operators. So the revenue was the main reason why the Commissioner did not press ahead with the proposal to implement those extra 2 time slots. If the government puts aside its concerns about revenue impacts for government for just a moment, then we have the opportunity in this bill to go back to what Mr Souleau, the former commissioner, asked for at the time and recommended at the time, and implement further blackouts here in South Australia. Ultimately, the reason, like I said, he didn't press ahead with it was because of those concerns. But in the face of what is happening nationally in terms of that nationally consistent approach and the resistance to a complete ban now, then what I am saying to members is, let's go it alone, let's introduce those 2 extra time slots, and let's lead the nation and let the others catch up. We don't have to wait for the others. We have already gone above and beyond what every other jurisdiction does. There is a growing call nationally. The AMA has the most recent peak body to join in the group of peak bodies and stakeholders and indeed federal members of parliament who are urging the national government to do the right thing. But we don't need to wait for that. This is very much an issue that ought to be addressed nationally, I agree, but we've done it before, we can do it again. We are already ahead of every other jurisdiction and can absolutely lead the way even further. This bill will enable us to do just that without interfering with that national agenda. I can't stress that or emphasise that enough. Revenue might be enticing, competition might be stiff, but like I asked with my previous bill, the question has to be asked, at what cost to the community? And there has to be a better reason. When 80% of Australians are telling you they don't want this sort of advertising, that speaks volumes about what we all think about it. And I think it speaks volumes about the resistance from the feds we need to rise above that. We have the ability to rise above that, and this bill would ensure indeed that we do indeed rise above that and lead the nation when it comes to gambling advertising bans.
Mr Hunter.
Debate now adjourned.